Mr. O'Toole, why do you feel it's safe this morning? Why do you feel it's still safe to be meeting indoors?
We're following all the rules as we always have, and Canadians can do that, particularly when we have vaccinations up. So we got to get people to get their boosters. Kids can get vaccinated. My 10-year-old has his first shot, so it's a great tool, and we'll talk to you after Caucus.
Have our caucus meetings, and we've been able to meet in Parliament in person. Of course, everyone is, following all guidelines, using the vaccine requirements and masking. We've been able to do it safely, and we think we can continue to do that.
Are you going to be able to reduce the number of people in the House of Commons as the Liberals open?
We've been meeting in person, and we've been doing so safely with with masking and with the vaccine requirement, and we think we can continue to do that.
What do you think needs to be done at the border?
What do you think would be travel restrictions or advice to not travel?
I think we just got to wait and see exactly what it is, and then comment once we know exactly what we're proposing. Right now it's all speculation, and until we see something solidified on paper, it's tough to comment on.
Would Conservatives support any kind of tougher border measures that already exist?
That's something we'll decide as Conservatives.
Is that something you're going to be talking about in there?
I assume so, but I really don't know.
What are your travel plans at Christmas?
I'm actually staying home. I haven't been home for 4 weeks, so I'm looking forward to just being in Saskatchewan, in northern Saskatchewan, and spending some time at the lake and just hanging out.
Do you think that caucus members should be traveling? What message has been sent from
right now they just follow the rules, and the rules are you can, but if the rules change, I guess everybody has to adapt accordingly. So we're no different than any other Canadian.
What did you make of the fiscal update yesterday? What stood out to you?
That's a good question. No plans going forward where it looks at supply chain resiliency. No plans on exactly what they're going to do to improve the relationship with the United States. No acknowledgement that there's even a problem with our relationship with the United States. Things like that are important to Canadians and important to our jobs and the economy. We keep seeing industries relocate into the U.S. that we don't even get a shot at here in Canada. Texas Instruments just announced a big semiconductor plant in Texas this week. We weren't even on the drawing board, so why is that? No ideas on improving competitiveness or dealing with cross-border and provincial border issues. I'm sorry, I'm winded here a little bit, but so some things like that I'd like to see for sure. Just didn't see any of that. So,
how has the mood in caucus changed since right after the election? This seems like it could be one of your last caucus meetings, at least for the year. So how's the mood changed?
The mood's strong. We're focused on Liberals, and that's where we need to be focused on. That's where Canadians want us to be focused on, and we'll be continued focused on the problems that we have with this Liberal government and the things that they're not doing for Canadians. So,
do you think the leadership question is over for Mr. O'Toole?
I'm going to leave that now.
You talked about the U.S., Canada.
What's the last caucus?
On va attendre de voir les recommandations de la santé publique. Je pense que c'est ce qui est important, d'écouter les scientifiques, d'écouter les recommandations de la santé publique. Il ne faut surtout pas que le politique prenne des décisions qui ne relèvent pas d'elle. On a vu hier Marc Collin décrier l'efficacité des tests rapides la journée même où Chrystia Freeland annonce qu'il y aura des tests rapides gratuits pour tous les Canadiens. Donc, les politiciens doivent se tenir en dehors du débat, faire en sorte que les scientifiques fassent des recommandations pour que les Canadiens sachent à quoi s'en tenir.
Vous seriez-vous à l'aise de voyager en ce moment?
Ben, moi, encore une fois, je vais attendre de voir les recommandations de la santé publique. Est-ce que l'Agence de santé publique va recommander ou pas des voyages? Je pense que c'est là qu'on doit être, écouter les recommandations, puis par la suite soumettre. Excuse-moi.
Est-ce qu'il faut bannir complètement les vols? Vous avez déjà eu des positions par le passé. Vous avez déjà dit aux libéraux qu'est-ce qu'ils devraient faire pour s'en sortir. Là, on a Omicron. C'est encore plus virulent. C'est encore plus contagieux qu'avant.
Ben, moi, ce que je retiens, c'est que le gouvernement n'était pas prêt quand est apparu Omicron. On a vu que le gouvernement était prêt à parler, mais pas à agir sur le terrain. Et malgré les recommandations de la santé publique, parce que le ministre Duclos a annoncé...
Ils ont fermé des frontières aux pays africains, non?
Oui, mais ça a pris combien de temps avant qu'il y ait des tests qui aient été effectués? Les aéroports, c'était le chaos. Donc, on dit des choses. Après 20 mois, on n'était même pas prêt à les appliquer. Donc, encore une fois, on peut douter de la capacité et surtout de la préparation du gouvernement par rapport à ces mesures-là. Donc, on attend de voir si le gouvernement, cette fois-là, est prêt et s'ils sont en mesure de faire appliquer les recommandations de la santé publique ou non. C'est ça qui compte le plus. Ça va?
Just your thoughts on Omicron, and it seems maybe there's panic, people are freaking out. What do you think?
I think the big thing is we've all talked about science. We don't have the science yet. That's what the disappointing decisions that we see are. They're not based on science.
Do we wait till we have the science? That becomes very difficult, of course. I think that we've asked Canadians to be immunized once, twice, 3 times, have your passport. We're all doing those things. And the frustration I think that we hear from Canadians is, what's the end game here? We've gone from 75 to 80 to 85 to 90% vaccination rates. Let's be honest, folks. Every one of you here knows we're not going to get to 100. For whatever reason that is, we're not going to get there. So then the pragmatic approach becomes, how are we going to live with COVID in our lives? It's here, and I think that what we're hearing from Canadians, what we're all hearing from Canadians, I know that it includes all of you here, because you talk to them as well as I do, that they're tired of COVID. We understand that there's danger out there. We do understand that. Canadians are following the rules. What is our end game, and how are we going to live with COVID? And that's going to be important that Canadians understand that, and that's what we need to hear going forward, because people out there are losing hope, and that's not pleasant, especially when we're in the holidays.
So should the federal government be looking at any kind of travel advisory, telling people to stay home this Christmas?
You know, I think the big things is we need to get back to looking at the science and saying, what does the science tell us? And we know that Omicron is here in Canada already. It's in countries. It was probably here before we closed the borders, right? So again, we have to think and begin to balance things to say, hey, you're not going to get COVID, but what's been going on with the opioid deaths in Canada? What's been going on with suicide rates? What's been going on with the hope that, guess what, if we're all not here, if we're not out there in the house, what are all of you doing as reporters? You're not getting an interview with me on Zoom.
Your
sadly.
province has successfully, I think, used rapid testing. I mean, made them available for free, made sure people have access. That's not uniform across the country.
No, but I think the federal government has purchased a huge lot of rapid tests, and that certainly can provide part of what we need going forward to say that this is important and part of our armamentarium and how we're going to move forward and live with COVID. That's going to be really important to begin to give Canadians hope, and I think all of you know here that that's going to resonate with Canadians, that we need some hope right now, and that we continue to see the changes, and that's frustrating.
I don't want to mistake your position, but when you're saying that we have to learn to live with COVID, we don't have the science on it yet. Are you saying that we should not be looking at different restrictions, or we should not be changing our posture?
I didn't say that. What I said was that right now with Omicron, we don't have the science. We know that it's potentially more transmissible. We don't know that it's more virulent, and we don't know that it's going to escape the vaccines. Right? We think that you're probably going to need a 3rd dose for it. The science just isn't there yet. So that's part of the question, absolutely. So, but COVID has been here when we get to March, I always call it March 13th because that was a Friday the 13th, of course. That'll be 2 years. So the question remains then, is this how you want to live the rest of your life? I'm a 53-year-old man, born in 1968. What's my average life expectancy? Let's call it 72 years. Am I going to live the rest of my life like this? That's the question, and I think that's part of the hope that Canadians need to say is, how do we live with Omicron? How do we live with COVID-19?
So what does it mean for your holiday plans? Are you changing Christmas plans because of...
You know what? In spite of COVID, Christmas is still going to happen. I love it. It's going to happen no matter what.
It happened last year as well. I know, newsflash, right?
Absolutely.
But I guess what I'm actually
Christmas
asking...
will continue to happen.
Of course it will, but how will you celebrate it? Are you going to, consider...
I'm
gathering limits and
I'm
that
a Christian guy, and I'm going to celebrate it in the traditional Christian sense, absolutely.
And how many people will be around you, sir?
You know what? When you look at that, it's going to be very important that we understand what the gathering limits are, and of course, I'm going to respect the gathering limits. Why would I not? I mean, that would be foolhardy as an individual, as a Canadian, and as a parliamentarian to not respect gathering limits. So, of course, I will follow the rules. That's part of what I want to do. So listen, I really want to wish all of you a Merry Christmas, a Happy New Year, and the only comment is, you're all a little close together. Thanks for your time, I appreciate it.
Thank you. Well, what do you think the Liberal majority do what is basically all virtual?
Well, I think everyone will do what they're comfortable with at this time. There's a lot of unknowns with the new variant. I think we haven't been given that advice yet, so we're still meeting in person.
What do you think? Do you think Conservatives need to take a look at what their position is when it comes to Bill 21?
Yes, I do. Well, I don't quite know what our position is right now, to be honest. I know we've had some members speak out. I've been one of them who believes that the bill should be condemned. Others have said it's just for the province to deal with. I personally think when something like that, when people are being targeted because of their religion or their religious, the things they wear because of their religion, we should speak out against that as Canadians.
What would you like to hear from Mr. O'Toole? Because he's the one saying this is a Quebec issue. What should he be saying on this?
I think some issues transcend jurisdiction, and I think Bill 21 is one of them.
So what should the Conservative stance be if you say it is unclear right now, that you would challenge it in court if you became government?
Well, I think we can't let laws like that go unchallenged. So yes, that would be my position, and it's the position that's shared by many, many of my colleagues.
Is that going to be talked about today?
I sure hope so.
Are you going to be bringing it up?
It will be brought up.
Listen, we've been very clear that it's something that we would not do at a federal level. This is not something that we would put in. And, yeah, it's something we don't agree with, but people in Quebec are going to have to sort this out. Thanks.
Well, some MPs, like Mr. Seaback, think he should be taking a stronger stance, like challenging this court. What about that? What do you make of the Conservative position on Bill 21? Do you think it needs to be changed or updated?
Well, I've been very clear always that I'm very opposed to Bill 21. I've tabled petitions in the House opposing Bill 21, and I will always stand with my Muslim, Sikh, and Jewish brothers and sisters who are concerned about how this bill is affecting them.
What about federal intervention? What about a federal intervention? What Mr. Shaw was asking for? Do you think that the federal government should intervene and go to the courts?
Frankly speaking, I'm not a lawyer, so I think the question of what the impact of federal legal intervention will be, I'll leave it to others who have more expertise in that.
What about
my position on this has been very clear and consistent.
But your leader has said that it's Quebec's thing,
I think
that the federal government should not intervene. Do you share that opinion?
Our leaders also said very clearly that he is opposed to Bill 21. He said that he personally opposes it. That's something that he's been consistent about as well. I
know that part,
bill,
but I'm asking about federal intervention.
Well, I mean, I think I responded to that question.
What about
already.
the Ambassador Bob Rae? Can Bob Rae stay even if he shares his thoughts on the Bill 21 or about a bill in Canada?
I know that Bob Rae has made some comments on this. To be honest, I haven't looked specifically at his comments.
He said that it's against the Charter of Human Rights, and he's the UN Ambassador of Canada.
Bob Rae has a legal background that I don't have, so I'd be interested in seeing his arguments on that. I can't really speak to.
So an ambassador can just say whatever he wants about laws in Canada in front of the UN?
I mean, again, I'd be interested in reading the comments in detail in terms of his arguments. But if he's making sort of technical legal arguments, again, that's not an area where I have expertise. I can just say for myself that I'm opposed to Bill 21. I'm concerned about its impacts. I'm concerned about the fact that somebody, because of their faith, would be removed from a position. What kind of message that sends to students in that classroom. So.
What message does it send, though, that Conservatives, while say we don't like this law, would never challenge a provincial law and say that this is a jurisdictional issue?
Well, I mean, I think I've been clear. Our leader's been clear, saying that he doesn't agree with the bill. So I think you know, our party has said, our leader has said, I've said, other individuals have said that we don't agree with the bill.
But the NDP and the Liberals both say that they are open to federal intervention, which is something that Conservatives will not go as far as saying.
Well, I mean, again, the sort of technical legal aspects of what impact the federal legal intervention would or wouldn't have, I mean, I'll leave that to others. I'll leave that to others to comment on the sort of the impact of that on a legal front. But look, I mean, the substance of the bill is something that I profoundly disagree with. I think religious pluralism, I think being a country where people of different faiths can equally participate in the public square in any region of the country is very, very important. Thank you.
Notre ambassadeur à l'ONU qui a fait des commentaires sur la loi 21 qui est supposément contraire à la Charte des droits de l'homme. Vous en pensez quoi de ça?
J'ai pas de commentaire à faire là-dessus. La position demeure la même, hein? C'est une décision du gouvernement du Québec, puis nous, on n'a pas à s'ingérer là-dedans.
Un ambassadeur, votre collègue, M. Charles, en entrant, il a dit, contrairement à ce que vous avez dit jusqu'à maintenant dans votre parti, que
oui, le gouvernement fédéral devrait intervenir. Est-ce que votre position a changé après le caucus?
Non.
Non.
Il n'y a aucun
Donc, M.
changement.
Charles,
C'est son
il
opinion.
remballe,
Il y en a qui ont leur opinion personnelle, là, mais la position est claire. M. O'Toole a toujours été clair là-dessus. C'est une loi qu'on ne ferait pas ici au niveau fédéral, mais que c'est le Québec qui en a pris la décision. On respecte la Constitution et la juridiction du Québec là-dedans, c'est tout.
Un ambassadeur qui dit ça, vous êtes ni pour ni contre?
Oh,
Il dire, si tu veux, sur les lois...
On a des opinions sur tout, là, mais je pense que M. Bob Ray, en tant que tel, il a ses opinions. Puis je veux dire, dans sa position d'ambassadeur à l'ONU, il doit avoir certaines réserves, c'est sûr. Puis là, il a peut-être outrepassé les réserves qu'un ambassadeur devrait avoir. Mais là-dessus, au niveau de la loi 21, j'ai pas d'autres commentaires à faire. Merci.
Merci. Je veux juste savoir si votre position a changé sur la loi 21 et qu'est-ce que vous pensez de vos collègues comme Mark Strahl qui disent que, en fait, faut que le Parti conservateur se prononce contre.
Vous le savez, comme au Québec, il y a des gens qui sont pour, il y a des gens qui sont contre la loi 21. Le Québec a la légitimité, on reconnaît que c'est une loi qui est provinciale. Fait que sincèrement, j'ai rien d'autre à rajouter que ça. Puis je suis conscient que dans mon caucus, il y a des gens qui ont des opinions différentes, comme les Québécois et les Québécoises. Puis bon, c'est contesté par certains. On va regarder ce qui est là. Il y a une élection provinciale qui s'en vient. Les gens vont pouvoir s'exprimer au Québec. Ça va? Merci.
How are you? Well, before I get to that, I just want to talk about the news that just broke that the inflation tax got worse in November. We're slightly higher consumer price inflation, and now we learned that house prices are up 20% year over year, even while the economy shrunk. That means the real purchasing power of Canadians' wages is in decline. We know that this is followed after $500 billion of inflationary deficits that the Trudeau government has pumped into this big economic balloon. And there are now greater risks. Higher interest rates usually follow high inflation. Canadians, their businesses, and their governments cannot afford higher interest rates. The Trudeau government has put us in great peril with this inflationary high spending and high cost government, and now Canadians are paying the price.
What specifically would the government do right now to reduce inflation while also supporting Canadians who may have to isolate into this new area?
Yeah. Well, first of all, we would cancel the tax increases the government has planned for January the 1st. We would cancel the new energy tax, the new wage tax, and the new alcohol tax that Trudeau will hit Canadians with in just a few weeks. That's no way to bring in the new year. Secondly, we would get back to normal pre-COVID levels of spending as quickly as possible after the crisis subsides, rather than baking in $100 billion of permanent new spending. Those are two concrete things we can do to reduce the inflation tax.
Do you think that the federal government has spent a significant amount of money that they passed along to the provinces effectively to manage COVID?
Yeah.
Do you think there's been adequate oversight and accountability for that? I mean, they're spending billions to buy more rapid tests when rapid tests are sitting on the shelves in the provinces. What's the federal government's accountability there?
Well, that they should follow the money. You raise a great example. I'll give you another example. FinTrack, which monitors organized crime and money laundering, says that people got the CERB even though they weren't in Canada, even though they had already received a payment in the very same week, even though they weren't eligible, and in some cases where they were suspected fraudsters. The government has not even followed up to make sure applicants of the CERB were actually eligible to receive it. And the Auditor General hasn't even done an audit of how that money was spent. So you have criminals, fraudsters, people not even living in Canada stuffing their pockets with Canadian tax dollars, and there's no accountability and no effort to reclaim those ill-gotten gains. That is one example of how accountability is needed in all of this spending.
Est-ce que vous avez parlé de la loi 21 en caucus aujourd'hui? Quelle est votre position personnelle?
On ne parle jamais de ce qui se passe ou ce qui ne se passe pas dans le caucus. Mais merci de m'avoir adressé en français. J'aurais dû faire ma déclaration en français aussi par rapport à l'inflation. Aujourd'hui, on voit la taxe d'inflation devient de pire en pire. Une autre inflation de 4,7 %, le plus haut depuis 1991. une augmentation de 20% pour le coût de l'immobilier. C'est une bulle immobilière et une bulle d'endettement qui va créer des risques pour des consommateurs et pour des Canadiens dès que les taux d'intérêt augmentent. Merci beaucoup.
Are you
We always
worried?
have to be worried. We have to be
Is it better? Are people seem to be panicking? The government's panicking. Do you think the response is calibrated right, or?
I think we have to act responsibly to protect the population. Thank you.
Christmas plans because of it?
No, my Christmas plans were already boring. I was planning to stay home with 2 screaming kids, and now as a result of this variant, I'm planning to stay home with 2 screaming kids. So, thanks very much.
That's the clip that everybody's going to use, and you know it. Thank you.
Bonjour tout le monde. J'ai une entrevue avec la radio dans quelques minutes. Je dois partir. Comme vous le savez, je m'oppose loi 21. Je ne déposerai pas une loi comme ça au fédéral. On va continuer de parler sur les enjeux importants au Québec et à travers le pays.
Mais M. Strauss voudrait qu'il y ait une intervention du gouvernement fédéral. Vous avez dit non, ça regarde seulement le Québec. Est-ce que votre position là-dessus a changé?
On doit parler comme une équipe, mais aussi c'est important de reconnaître les compétences provinciales et le processus judiciaire au Québec. Et c'est une question importante pour les Québécois et l'Assemblée nationale. Mais comme d'habitude, on va parler comme une équipe sur les enjeux importants.
Donc, M. Strauss, sa position n'a pas eu...
The government is expected to announce new travel restrictions today, advising against non-essential travel. Do you think that's the right move, or should it be stronger?
I think we have to look at getting boosters out because the vaccines are the most important tool. So let's accelerate it, keep things open.